are not repealed immediately, I want to say that the integrity of the 2027 election will be in flames. I want to quickly advise Inec to quickly go back to the National Assembly to call for the repeal of this section 63 as quickly as possible. You see, a stone seeing coming should not blind the eye. Because this is the foundation. Yeah. The ballot is the foundation. You are saying that a ballot paper that does not have the serial number of the official mark of INEC should be accepted. You now give a discretion. Look at discretion given to a presiding officer. You know, when I said I have not been interested in so many things because I'm so disappointed, but I decided that, look, let me go through the Electoral Act. And I found that whereas the last intervention we had here, we're discussing about section 60, subsection 3, where they provided a proviso that will undermine the 2027 official elections. I have now found a more dangerous 3 provisions, and I put them out so that I think that Nigerians can read it, they can see it before any comment. First, let's go to section 63. Now, section 63, which I just discovered, they have now reintroduced something very terrible. You can see it there. That ballot paper that will be used for the 2027 election, that does not bear the official mark, the official security features of INEC, should be accepted by presiding officer. You can read it there. That where the returning officer satisfied, the word satisfied, that was contained in section 49 of the 2010 Act that took us 20 years until 2022 to repeat, to remove, because what is the objective condition to determine what satisfies a presiding officer? A presiding officer has now been given the discretion to now accept ballot paper, notwithstanding the absence of the official mark, and to count that ballot paper. What that means is that before this election, politicians who now have access to the the security features of INEC ballot, they are going to produce their ballot papers. They are going to print their own ballot paper that have to be accepted. This is dangerous, as you put in the Electoral Act. Similarly, may I show section 138? No, 138. Let's go to section 138. Section 138 has been one of the rigging provisions that we have cried out to be removed. As a matter of fact, you remember that in 2019, in this current republic, under Buhari was the only time that there was no Electoral Act passed. Because when we made that recommendation that this thing should be removed, this section should be removed, you remember that it was rejected. And what the section says? Grant of final petition. It says that an act or omission which may be contrary to the instruction or directive of the commission or of an officer appointed for the purpose of election, but which is not contrary to the provision of this act, shall not of itself be a ground for questioning the election. May I make a few observations here? You see, when you want to deceive people, you put it in words. Bring that section back again. What they basically said, they were just short of referring to INEC regulations and guidelines, because the instruction and directive of INEC are contained in INEC regulation and guidelines. They are saying that a presiding officer, an assistant presiding officer, a collation officer, a returning officer, they can abandon it. So they provided immunity there without repeating. Then let's go to the last section. It will interest Nigerians to know that section 137 now says that all those categories of individuals, I think the other time I provided you what we call a pyramid. All the categories that we have just mentioned, presiding officer, returning officers, it says that where the petition, that's anybody go to petition now, to go to file a petition, complaints of the conduct of an electoral officer, a presiding officer, returning officer, it shall not be necessary to join such officer. That is, those who have disobeyed to follow Inec instruction and guideline, that it shall not be necessary to bring them to the commission. That was why, you remember in 2019, in 2023 and previous elections, you find that because Inec has been joined, you are saying that the people who rig election, presiding officer who actually were the maker of the document, you said because you have invited, you have joined Inec as a respondent, it shall not be necessary to bring them to the tribunal. Meanwhile, the courts have always complained about what we call dumping of documents. That petitioners should come and call for oral evidence. To deal with that, under Section 137 in the 2022 Act, a new law was put in there to the effect that if document, because you remember that in the 2023 election, there were results, about 18,000 in different parts of the different, where they had different numbers of result sheets that were mutilated. You could not read them, but votes were attributed to them. But they were certified by our commission. They were taken to court. You remember that when a director of our commission, who unfairly was brought to speak to a document he did not make, he was not able to read them. Yet the court will now propose under the 2022 Act that have now been removed, to the effect that once there's a complaint about non-compliance to the due process, to the extent that the document is before the court, certified as Inec document, it shall not be necessary to call oral evidence because of the fact that most of the presiding officer will not be around. Dr. Abati, as we speak, this provision that I have outlined, particularly, it means that at the level of the balloting, it has been sabotaged to the extent that ballot papers, you can now going to have ballot box stuffing, people are going to produce their ballot paper. Remember, in 2019, in 2 states, one in the southeast, one in the south-south, some unscrupulous members of our commission gave the serial number, gave the security features of ballot papers to politicians. And when Inec, in the case of Imo State, went to the court to say that this document, result sheet, is not our document, but guess what? The court, tribunal, upheld a forged document. This is where the role of the judiciary comes in. And this is where I am worried. When Dr. Abayo said, I have been, see, my clarion call since 2010 when I came to the commission has always been on the basis of my experience as a young man who had my first school in Ondo State, when Fagbengbe was killed because of the outcome of election. And that's why I've always called on my constituents to say that our legal profession is not just to make a living. We have a special role to play in the life of a society. And that is why if Hussaini and Dr. Abadi, you have a problem, you come to us as lawyers. When you have a problem between yourself and government, you come to us as a lawyer. And that the lawyer, the judiciary, must be the last line of defense of democracy and the rule of law. But that has not happened historically and unfortunately. The